The wealthiest investor in modern history, Warren Buffett, has spent decades searching for assets that reliably return 20% annually. He has largely failed. You are currently holding one in your wallet, except the 20% is flowing in the wrong direction, out of your account and into a bank's. That is not a metaphor. That is the arithmetic of modern consumer credit. If this kind of financial clarity matters to you, the kind that changes how you allocate every hryvnia, every dollar, every unit of your future, consider making this channel part of your regular thinking. The investors who accelerate fastest are those who commit to a framework and hold themselves to it. Tell us in the comments, what is the single principle that governs your financial decisions right now? Your answer will shape what we build together here. Charlie Munger said it plainly. Once you get into debt, it's hell to get out. Don't let credit card debt carry over month to month.
You cannot get ahead paying 18%. That was not advice. That was a verdict. Munger and Warren Buffett built Berkshire Hathaway into one of the most formidable capital compounding machines in financial history. They have never found a legitimate, predictable investment strategy that systematically beats credit card interest rates. Not one. And yet, millions of people carry a card balance every single month. They invest in index funds while paying 44% on revolving debt. They search for yield while bleeding from a wound they have stopped noticing. The S&P 500 has returned between 8 and 11% annually over the last 50 years. That is the historical benchmark for long-term equity wealth creation. It is also, compared to a credit card, almost irrelevant. The average credit card rate in developed economies runs at approximately 18%. In periods of tight monetary policy, it clears 24%.
In Ukraine, the real annual percentage rate on mass market bank cards reaches between 44 and 81%. That is not a rate. That is a gravity well. Here is the core mathematical truth. If you hold 1,000 units of free cash and simultaneously carry 1,000 units of credit card debt at 18%, you face a capital allocation decision. Invest the cash in equities and expect roughly 10%, taxable, volatile, uncertain. Or pay off the debt. The debt repayment delivers a guaranteed, tax-free, risk-free return of exactly 18%. No fund manager in the world can offer you that deal. Borrowing at 18% while earning 8 to 11% creates a gap. That gap has a name: negative interest rate arbitrage. It is not a theory. It is a mathematical certainty. The gap destroys net worth, silently, automatically, every single month. 18% is a developed market figure. Ukraine's real annual percentage rate on mass market cards does not start at 18.
It starts at 44, and at Private Bank's Universal Card, it reaches 81.37%. Monobank's Black Card, marketed as a zero-fee, cash-back-loaded lifestyle product, carries a real APR of between 44.26 and 80.74% the moment you fail to clear the balance. The grace period on that card runs 62 days. During those 62 days, the nominal rate is 0.00001%. It feels free. The bank knows it is not. Financial institutions have spent billions modeling the exact percentage of cardholders who will not clear their balance before day 63. When that balance rolls over, on the full original amount, the standard rate activates. The grace period was never a gift. It was a behavioral experiment, and the bank already knew the results before you applied. So who funds the cashback rewards? Who pays for the points, the travel miles, the 2% back on groceries? The answer is documented and precise.
The financially disciplined customers, those who always pay in full, receive rewards that are entirely funded by the customers who do not. The weakest borrowers subsidize the perks of the strongest. It is an automated wealth transfer, operating invisibly at scale. Consider now the minimum payment trap. A credit card balance of 100,000 hryvnias, a real annual rate of 45%, a minimum payment set at 4% of the outstanding balance. In month 1, that 4% payment amounts to 4,000 hryvnias. Of that 4,000 hryvnias, approximately 3,750 covers interest alone. Only 250 hryvnias reduces the actual principal. 250. At that pace, you are not paying off debt. You are renting money, month after month. The balance barely moves. The bank collects. The compound interest formula, the same formula that builds generational wealth for investors, runs in reverse, compounding daily against you. The formula is identical in both directions.
A equals P multiplied by 1 plus R over N, raised to the power of N times T. When R is 0.10 and you are the investor, time is your greatest asset. When R is 0.45 and you are the borrower, time is your executioner. Capital, by strict economic definition, is an accumulated resource that generates additional value over time. A credit card is the precise opposite. It pulls your future income into the present at a deeply negative discount rate. You are not borrowing money. You are selling your future labor at a steep compounding penalty. Why would anyone invest in equities while carrying revolving credit card debt? The answer, almost always, is cognitive illusion. A credit limit feels like capital. It is listed in your banking app alongside your actual balance. The architecture is deliberate. The confusion is by design. Buffett has never borrowed at 20% to buy even the most reliable cash-generating business on the planet. Think carefully about what that means.
The man who has spent his entire career finding undervalued assets, assets with durable competitive advantages, predictable cash flows, and decades of operating history, has never found one worth borrowing at the rates your credit card charges for a weekend purchase. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Every number cited here comes from documented regulatory filings, published bank product terms, and National Financial Authority data. The math does not belong to any ideology. It belongs to arithmetic. Bank cards at 44 to 81% are by every financial metric the worst deal most people will ever sign. But they are not the floor. There is a sector where the real annual percentage rate reaches not 81%, not 365%, but numbers that make those figures look conservative.
The microloan industry operates in a different mathematical universe entirely, and 8.6 million contracts were signed inside it in a single year. You already know that bank credit cards carry real annual rates between 44 and 81%. But what if I told you that 81% is not the floor? That it is not even close to the floor? Below the bank card market sits an entirely different industry. It is called microlending. And its architects did not build it to help you through a hard month. They built it to keep you in it permanently. The advertising is disarmingly simple. 0.01% per day. That number sounds almost harmless. It sounds like a rounding error. It is not. 0.01% per day, compounded across a full year, does not produce a modest rate. It produces an annual rate that begins at over 3,600%. That is the entry point, not the ceiling.
Licensed microlenders in Ukraine are required to disclose their real annual percentage rates. When they do, the numbers are not typos. Credit 7 and Shvidko Hroshi post real APRs between $1,132 and $11,016%. One lender, Starfin, discloses a real APR of 660,520%. Read that number again. 660,520% on an annualized basis. That is not a loan. That is a mechanism for the systematic mathematical extraction of everything a borrower will ever earn. How does this industry exist? How does it grow? The answer is regulatory arbitrage, and it is elegant in its ruthlessness. When Ukrainian regulators capped short-term microloan rates at 1% per day, lenders did not lower their rates. They changed the paperwork. Short-term contracts were quietly reclassified as long-term contracts, nominally spanning 3 years. That single document change triggered a 36-fold increase in that loan category. 36 times.
In one regulatory cycle, the rules changed. The math did not. The borrower walking through the door in a moment of financial desperation was still walking into the same trap. The label on the door was different. Nothing else was. Here is what that industry looks like at scale. By the end of 2025, total outstanding microloan debt in Ukraine reached 27.65 billion hryvnias. That is a 1/3 increase in a single year. In 2025 alone, 8.6 million individual microloan contracts were signed. Think about that population. 8.6 million contracts. These are not corporations optimizing their balance sheets. These are households, individual people, signing documents that carry 4-digit, 5-digit, and 6-digit annual interest rates. And the industry that serves them is thriving. The top 10 microlenders generated 18.54 billion hryvnias in total revenue in 2025. Their collective net profit grew 1.6 times in a single year, reaching 1.8 billion hryvnias.
The abyss is profitable for the people who own it. Cashback is not a gift. It is a subsidy paid by the financially weakest users to the financially strongest ones. The borrowers who miss payments, who carry balances, who roll into penalty rates, they generate the revenue that funds your 1 to 5% rewards. The system does not malfunction when people fall behind. That is when the system performs exactly as designed. There is a precise mathematical threshold at which the debt machine locks shut. When a household's total debt obligations exceed 60% of its monthly income, default is not a risk. It is a mathematical inevitability. Not a possibility, an inevitability. At that threshold, the borrower cannot reduce principal. Every payment is consumed by interest. The balance does not fall, it grows. The lender does not need to take any further action. The compound interest engine runs itself. This is the logical extension of what you saw in Chapter 1.
A 4,000 hryvnia minimum payment on a 100,000 hryvnia balance at 45% APR. Only 250 hryvnias of that payment reduces the actual debt. The rest goes directly to the bank, every single month, as pure income. Microloan math does not produce 250 hryvnias of progress. It produces negative progress. The balance is larger the morning after you pay than it was the morning before. So why do 8.6 million people sign these contracts in a single year? Because the human brain is not built to process 6-digit annualized rates from a number that says 0.01% per day.
The advertising is calibrated to that gap in perception, precisely and deliberately. This is not a character flaw in the borrower. It is a design specification of the product. The entire industry is engineered around one cognitive vulnerability. People dramatically underestimate the cost of borrowing when the rate is expressed as a daily figure. That is not an accident of disclosure.
It is the product's primary feature. The industry knows this. The behavioral research is not hidden. The gap between the daily rate a borrower perceives and the annual rate they actually pay exists because the product was built around it. An industry that grew its debt stock by 1/3 in 1 year. 8.6 million contracts. Real APRs reaching 600, 6,500, 20%. A regulatory cap circumvented in months. Net profits up 1.6 times. This system is not broken. It is working exactly as its architects intended. The system is designed to keep you in it. But there is a precise 3-step exit, and it begins with a single physical act.
As the installation of a physical barrier between your impulses and your debt. Every spending decision has a gap between the impulse and the action. The card eliminates that gap. Destroying it restores it. That gap is worth more than any reward program you will ever use. This is not about willpower. Willpower is a depleting resource. Cognitive friction is a system. You are replacing a broken system with a functional one. Consider what you are actually protecting. On a 100,000 hryvnia balance at 45% annual interest, a minimum payment of 4%, that is 4,000 hryvnias per month, reduces your principal by exactly 250 hryvnias. The remaining 3,750 goes directly to the bank. You are not paying off debt. You are renting it, month after month, at a rate your income can never outrun. You have destroyed the card. The bleeding has stopped, but the wound is still open. And here is what most people get wrong about closing it. They assume all debt is equal.
They attack the smallest balance first because it feels manageable, or they attack the largest because it feels urgent. Neither instinct is a strategy. Both will cost you money you did not need to spend. There are 2 debt repayment strategies. Each is mathematically sound. Each serves a different human need. The one you choose should depend on knowing yourself, not on following a trend. The first is the debt avalanche. You list every debt you carry. You rank them from the highest interest rate to the lowest. You pay the minimum on every debt except the one at the top of the list. Every available hryvnia goes there. When it is gone, you move to the next. The avalanche is the most mathematically efficient path out of debt that exists. It minimizes total interest paid. It shortens the repayment timeline. It defeats the strongest enemy first. But here is what the math cannot measure: the months when nothing seems to be moving. Large debts shrink slowly. If your highest rate debt is also your largest balance, you may go 6 months without crossing a single finish line. Some people stop before they reach one. That is where the second strategy enters: the debt snowball. Ranks your debts from the smallest balance to the largest, regardless of interest rate. You attack the smallest first. You eliminate it. Then you redirect that payment to the next. The eliminated balances build momentum. The snowball costs more in total interest. That is a mathematical fact. But it generates wins. Early wins produce behavior change. Behavior change, sustained over years, produces outcomes that pure mathematics alone cannot. That is not a contradiction. That is how humans work.
There is one rule that overrides this entire choice. If any of your debts carries an annual rate above 1,000%, and as you now know, microloan APRs in Ukraine run from 1,132% to over 11,000%, that debt receives the avalanche. Unconditionally. Every time. No exceptions.
At those rates, the snowball's psychological advantage is irrelevant. The compounding is so aggressive that a 6-month delay in targeting the highest rate debt can cost more than the principal itself. The math at that level is not nuanced. It is a verdict. Every debt you eliminate frees a payment. That payment now has a new destination, and where you send it determines everything that follows. Ukraine's government bonds, OVDPs, currently yield 16.15% annually. That yield is fully tax-free. The minimum purchase is 1,000 hryvnias. In 2025, retail investment in OVDPs grew by 42.6%. These are not sophisticated instruments. They are accessible. They are government-backed, and they compound in your direction. Think of it this way. You were handing money to a bank every month to carry a balance. Now you hand that same money to yourself, and it returns to you larger than it left. The direction of the current has reversed. Consider the delta.
You were paying a bank 45%, 81%, or worse, to carry debt. You are now earning 16.15%, tax-free, on every hryvnia you redirect. The shift exceeds 97 percentage points. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a structural reversal. This is what financial discipline actually looks like. Not sacrifice, not deprivation. You take money that was bleeding out every month and you point it the other way. The amount does not matter at first. The direction does. The day you stop paying banks for your lifestyle is the day compound interest changes sides. That is not inspiration. That is arithmetic.